Well, hi, welcome to the KaiNexus Continuous Improvement Podcast. I'm Mark Graban, a senior advisor with KaiNexus, and we are joined, as we do occasionally, by
Greg Jacobson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of KaiNexus.
Yeah, so it's great to see you, Greg. We've been trying to do these podcasts more often to kind of chat, talk about lean topics, continuous improvement topics. We're building upon a chance to be together in person last week. It was the KaiNexus mid-annual meeting. We had the whole KaiNexus team together there in Austin. That was a really good opportunity.
It was fun. One question to kick things off, because I know it's going to lead to a little conversation regarding some lean principles, is did you have any travel delays getting back to your home?
Oh, I did. It was on Friday. It was on, we're going to call it Crowdstrike Day.
Okay. I like it.
The computer problem that affected so many, including airlines and hospitals. I was delayed about an hour getting out of Austin, connecting into DFW, and I thought it was going to be scrambling. Well, then the DFW flight was delayed 2 hours for me to Cincinnati. So I got home at about midnight. Not ideal, 2 hours late, but it was worse for many, many people.
Yeah, it's interesting. We called Delta yesterday for something completely unrelated, and they literally just said, if you're not calling about an immediate travel issue, please call us later in a few days. They're still canceling flights related to that. So it's really been a disaster. What's interesting, Mark, is, as you know, my wife is an ER doctor who was out of shift, and they were unable to read films. I mean,
wow.
All of that's done virtually through the central, and she's in a small ER. They actually spread radiologists out to all the different ERs to go read in real time. But hers was a small ER. They weren't able to do that. And so she had to transfer people. And I'm sure that didn't create the level of care that she's able to provide when they have the ability to get, CT scans in real time. So,
yeah, because if they've got Windows PCs that had the CrowdStrike software installed, they were just giving the blue screen. It's called the blue screen of death. That doesn't seem appropriate. It's a bit grim.
Yeah.
Think about how that might affect healthcare situations. But,
go ahead.
No, go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, there's no question in my mind that it affected lots of things, and I just wouldn't be surprised if there were some deaths involved in it in some indirect way. I mean, 911 was down in hundreds of cities, So,
I mean, it was being labeled, quote unquote, the Microsoft glitch or crash, which is sort of unfair because it was not Microsoft software. It was just software that many corporations use on their Windows PCs, right? You've probably looked at this a lot more closely than I have.
Oh, I actually haven't. But what I have thought about is what is the root cause work and what is the improvement work going on there now? What does that look like? Because, my dad, who's in his 80s and isn't tech savvy at all, was just like, well, how could they have let this happen? And I'm thinking to myself, well, software is very complicated. Yeah. I'm sure they didn't intentionally code a bug and send it off in the wild. But you can't help but think, what process problem had to have occurred that would have allowed something of this gravity to go out? So
yeah, because I mean, from what I've read about this, it was a configuration file related to this software, and there was some error in it, and then it begs the question of, well, what kind of testing is done,
of course,
before these updates get pushed out to users? Is it some sort of staged, like, what do you do to mitigate the risk? Like, I think that's a form of mistake proofing. Do they roll it out to a set of users and wait and see if there are problems reported? Because I mean, this is software designed to provide security, and as the threats in the internet world are constantly changing, these software providers, there's some sense of urgency. Like when KaiNexus pushes an update, like, we're doing it because we're fixing bugs, we're improving the software, but it's probably not as time sensitive as security software might be.
Right. And I'm struggling to see how a test couldn't have identified this. If the testing was, the processes were intact, simply because it affects all the computers. Having said that, now being in software now for well over a decade, in some ways almost 2 decades, computer bugs are sometimes really weird. And they wouldn't have affected a testing environment, but could have affected a different situation. I'm just interested to know, were there stresses at the company that was making people work in such ways that they were not given the resources, whether those are time or whether those are other softwares that they use, or just like be very interesting to see. And then how are they handling something of this magnitude internally? Are they blaming people? Are they looking at process? What kind of firefighting things are they doing immediately? But then what kind of process changes are they doing for the long term? So,
I'd be curious to see what they learn. How do they adjust? You're pointing to systemic factors. I haven't read. I should have looked at this before we started recording. Like, did they blame a person?
Right. There's no question in my mind that one outcome of this is, at the end of the week, we hear, oh, we looked into this and a developer didn't follow protocol or didn't do this, and it's the pilot in the aviation accident scenario that we see so often.
Yeah, but you or I might ask, well, why were they able to do that? Like, it's a system problem. One person may have hit the wrong key if it was as simple as that. But one thing, back to the mid-annual meeting, we had a discussion again about psychological safety and learning from mistakes, and psychological safety as feeling safe to speak up when you want to about problems, ideas, concerns, to disagree. And one thing I was happy to see, one question I posed as I do in different workshops or keynote talks is, like, what reaction would you expect to get internally within KaiNexus to a mistake? And the 3 choices were, a punitive response, a nice response, which might be things like, well, hey, don't feel bad. We know you didn't mean to do it. It's okay. And then end of story, versus kind, where, a kind response is helpful and constructive, like understanding how it could have happened. How do we mistake proof it? Kind of those 3 categories. And of about 40 survey responses, not a single person said they would expect a punitive response. That's the only time I've had a group, whether it was in an organization or across multiple organizations, where nobody said we would expect a punitive response. And it was like a 2-to-1 ratio of people saying they would expect a kind response, as I had defined it, compared to nice, when usually I see it almost looks more like a bell curve. Like, some people would expect punitive, a lot of people expect nice, but it's even better to have that kind, constructive, helpful response. I'd love to hear some of your reflections on that question.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that every time you've done that survey, you had never received that. My data and my skepticism in the scientific mind from me says, well, did you ever survey a 40-person software company where the CEO was in the room?
I did not. I did not.
So I wonder how much of that influence was, or, did you ever survey it as a single company where senior leadership was in the room? That would be a pretty similar situation. But
I have not, but that's something I should go and try to recreate or test, or, my sense would be, I don't, compared to, there were some candid responses in other survey questions.
That was the exact thing I was.
I don't think you and other executives being in the room influenced people to answer what you would want to hear.
Right. We definitely had. We had some other answers in surveys that were stinging. So I agree with you. That would be kind of the balance on that. But after I kind of get all my skepticism, thoughts out of the way, it rings true. I don't ever recall, really punitively, blaming people for certain things. Probably the worst kind of case scenario would be, we've had to let people go who have had issues, whether those are kind of individual issues or kind of work issues. I don't feel like any of them have been punitive, though. Like
it wasn't in direct reaction to a mistake. It was more general
right,
fit, job performance.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, so that feels like it rings true, and I'm obviously incredibly proud of the result. One of the things that I'm going to change topics slightly, Mark.
Sure.
One of the things I was thinking about is I'd love to see what the checklist looks like when they kind of go through all the testing and was it something in regression?
Back to CrowdStrike.
Right, exactly. So,
yeah.
I know that our regression testing, it's in the hundreds, if not thousands, of checklist things that they have to cross off and make sure. I have no idea exactly what that number is. I'm just guessing it's not 4, and what that looks like. And it reminded me of our checklist.
Yeah.
For our annual and mid-annual meeting, that one thing I want to add to it is ask the resident ER doctor at the company, are we in a COVID surge? And we should test people. I mean, the pandemic.
And that resident ER doc is Greg, for those who don't know.
Right. And and so we just didn't think about it. We haven't had a company gathering where we've been testing. We did that through the depths of the pandemic very frequently, but unfortunately we had some COVID most likely spread at the mid-annual. We presume there's no way to 100% know, but we are in a surge. And so had someone asked me, I'd have been like, yeah, that would be a couple $100 of COVID tests. That would make a lot of sense. And so it's been an interesting, COVID strikes again as we are, seemingly further away from the depths of the pandemic. So,
and is that surge state true across the U.S. or does it depend on the city or region even?
I just don't follow the data like I used to, Mark, but I know it anecdotally, and I know it through some like lay headlines I've seen in the Austin area. I mean, I had COVID in the last month and a half, but I picked it up over in the Scandinavian countries, and so it was on a situation where we were interacting with people from all over the world, so it could have come from anywhere. Yeah. But it's definitely reared its head, and I bring it up less about the COVID and more about the fact that checklists need to be active and living documents, and if they don't update their processes based on this and don't update their checklist, then it just would be an opportunity lost and something to think about.
Well, and there's an opportunity to learn from that. I mean, what I hear you saying, Greg, is that it was a mistake to not anticipate that or to do the testing. And I appreciate you admitting that. And I think your tendency to say things like I was wrong or I made a mistake directly. I've heard you say it very directly sometimes. That helps set a tone for others to feel safe to speak up. And you're thinking through this in a way where I don't hear you beating yourself up, but it's fair to say, okay, well, that was a miss. We should have done that. And we're going to make some changes. See, that's the difference between nice and kind. Nice, I could say, well, Greg, don't feel bad. Everybody needs to take responsibility. I've gotten boosted again. More people are wearing masks when they travel. That's nice. Kind is saying, well, hey, thank you for admitting that. Thank you for setting that example. Thank you for updating the checklist. And when we get together for the annual meeting at the beginning of next year, 2025, even if it's not a surge, that still might be just a prudent and inexpensive thing to do.
Yeah, I'm thinking two things. One, I wish they just had a viral URI test, so you could just.
What do you mean by URI? Sorry,
upper respiratory tract infection, and it would just tell you like, yes, you got one of the ones that cause a cold. Because I mean, just on that annual, I mean, you're throwing together your whole ELT and your upper management, your teams together for full day at a time. Knocking out 2 to 3 days of someone's productivity is well worth. Just saying, oh, you're sick right now. You just joined virtually. We don't want to get whatever you have, just because it's going to knock us off our game some percentage.
Right.
And then the other thing that was that made me think that is or that I thought when you mentioned that, Mark, was and I can't remember if I read this from your Mistakes That Make Us or from another source, but there's like mistakes of commission or omission or
I wrote about that.
You wrote about
right.
it. Okay, yeah.
The things you do that are a mistake.
Yeah,
I
didn't want to put
you didn't do that you should have. Yeah.
Say it again. Sorry, I think I was talking over you. Yeah.
Well, I was talking over you. It was a mistake of omission, where we didn't do something, and then in hindsight, we're like, oh, we should have done the thing, as opposed to a mistake of commission, something we did do that we shouldn't have.
I was pretty sure it was in your book. I just didn't want to put you on the spot where you were like, nope, didn't write about that.
I think I did. Yeah.
I feel like that's where I learned that. And that's what that feels like. It feels like a mistake of omission that in hindsight, I was like, we should have done that versus another one. But I think the important thing is that you're using checklists and that you're revisiting checklists and you're catching those things. So,
yeah. Well, so maybe then last question for you, Greg, before we wrap up, to bring it back to the first discussion about Crowdstrike and learning not only from your own mistakes but from others. What things do you look at now within KaiNexus? You know, what do you think could be learned from the Crowdstrike situation when we think about our own releases, our own processes?
Yeah, I mean, I know we have pretty robust processes. I think probably the thing to think through would be, hopefully Crowdstrike gives an honest assessment and a transparent, so other software companies can learn, because and then studying what happened with them and seeing if it applies to anything that relates to KaiNexus. I think would be the first thing that comes to mind. I don't know. Was there something that you thought?
No, I mean, I guess, I was just curious to hear your thought process of what you learn and what others in the tech side of the business are looking at and reading. But, I know you and the other leaders are going to encourage people to take a fresh look at things and not have to learn from our own potential mistakes.
Very true. Do you think we have time for an Ask Us Anything question, or should we save it for our next?
I think we can tie a bow around our conversation here. We can catch up on those other questions other times. Leftover questions from the Lean strategy team. Ask Us Anything, and Greg, maybe you and I can do another Ask Us Anything webinar at some point with those questions and others. But yeah, thanks again for doing another podcast here. I hope people enjoy it, whether they are KaiNexus customers or part of our community. It's always good to hear what you're thinking about, and it's good to have these conversations.
Well, thanks for putting this together, Mark. I always appreciate the conversations with you.
Yeah. So again, I'm Mark Graban, Senior Advisor with KaiNexus, and Greg Jacobson, one of our co-founders and our CEO. We'll see you
next time.
Yeah.